help us dissect what inflation is, how it is affecting the economy, and how it even affects current businesses, and how businesses can work with that.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you for having me. It's an interesting conversation we are about to have, so that we will be able to ensure that everybody follows. I will try not to be technical, accounting, or economic wise. So what's inflation? What's inflation? Going back to the brass tacks, every one of us is aware of the two simple factors of demand and supply. That's economics 101. Says that it is the demand that drives supply, and supply can temper demand. That means that, and what's demand to a market woman? It means that the quantity of goods that people want to buy, or are able to buy, or are willing to buy. So I'm moving beyond the want. So I want to have this chair. Am I able to buy the chair? Demand is not effective until I have the power to be able to get it supplied. And supply is to say that I own or I possess these goods. The offering and the conditions are right for me to want to let you have it. That's basically demand and supply. And it drives businesses, it drives commerce. Inflation then comes to play when there is too much money chasing too few goods or supply or services. In the sense that usually the interplay between demand and supply creates a simple balance called equilibrium. I have 7 to buy. I have 7 to sell. There are about 7 people willing to buy. And so I put my 7 in the market. 7 people takes it. That means the demand. However, in a situation where I now have 5, and then there are 7 willing and able buyers, that means that I either decide that I do not increase prices. And so the first 5, or the earliest 5, or the better positioned 5, they take the 5 goods that I have, and the 2 have their money, have their desire, have their ability, but cannot purchase. And I am assuming that I am the only supplier and they are the only demander. And so what then happens is that either from the side of the buyers or the demanders, the 2 begins to think, why didn't I get the 5 that is in supply? And so what I'll do the next time is that I'll probably add more money to influence the buyer. Or the buyer, who is the supplier, says, wow, I left 2 buyers unattended to. So what do? I either deploy more resources to manufacture more, or I get more for my 5. And so if the buying price was 100 naira, he then says, bring 120. So he wants to do a natural selection of the 7. So it's whoever brings the 120 that is able to buy his chairs. And so that's demand and supply, simple. And that's also too much demand for a limited supply comes in. And so inflation comes in that way. Inflation is a persistent or consistent increase in prices. Consistent, persistent, overrated increase in prices. The true value of those chairs was 100 naira. But because he sees that there are 7 or more people chasing me, he then increases the price. And so the driver of how much he or she is willing to sell is no longer the value derivation. It is the selection process. He wants to maximize profit. He wants to select the fittest buyer so that at the end of the day he smiles. The 7. So it's whoever brings the 120 that is able to buy his chairs. And so that's demand and supply, simple. And that's also too much demand for a limited supply comes in. And so inflation comes in that way. Inflation is a persistent or consistent increase in prices. Consistent, persistent, overrated increase in prices. The true value of those chairs was 100 naira. But because he sees that there are 7 or more people chasing me, he then increases the price. And so the driver of how much he or she is willing to sell is no longer the value derivation, it is the selection process. He wants to maximize profit, he wants to select the fittest buyer so that at the end of the day he smiles. So inflation simply means now that there's so much money chasing very limited goods. And inflation can also be brought by different ways. There's also that thing called price control. The government can come and say, hey, our food should be very reasonable and affordable. And so the government says that you cannot sell this measure of food for more than this amount. And so the guy who is the supplier is suddenly not incentivized anymore. You are forcing me to sell my plantain at 500 naira when a willing buyer is willing to pay 1,000 naira. But government is saying that there are also people who need to eat but cannot do 1,000. And so I peg it at 500. You know what happens to the supplier? Is he either hurts or he shifts markets. Hurting means that he says, duh, is it government that is making the produce for me? Let government go and manufacture now and sell to you. So he holds his goods. Or he simply looks and says, Benin is down the road. There are no control measures. And they are willing to sell at maybe 1, even 900. And so he moves his goods. Then what then happens? Even the 500 that you have pegged the price at, both the people who are able to buy at 1,000 and the people who are unable to buy are now starving and are willing to pay anything that anybody is willing to sell for it. And so that it becomes a race. Everybody is now saying, just bring it, I'll buy it. The people who said I didn't have money before, that the government is trying to protect, now looks for a way because survival becomes more important to them buy. So inflation, very simply, and that's the problem we have, is that there is too much money. And I keep emphasizing because I expect some questions to follow. How come we have too much money? Right. How come? In an economy where poverty is prevalent, the simple issue is that take fuel, for example, and we'll come to it maybe in the conversation. We are a largely fuel-producing economy. However, we cannot meet our demand. And that's why you can come today and it is costing 800 naira. Then you just hear on the news that by tomorrow it is 970. And the next time it is 1,200. Because we have money. Now that we are rich, we need a commodity. But it is not enough to go round. And so there must be a selection process akin to what you have for your JAMB. Everybody writes JAMB. You pass 200 and you think you've done well. However, medicine is saying that I can only take 200 people. And so medicine says my cutoff mark is 301. And that means it's now high price or high marks. Many people passed, but only a few people can come in. And so that's how inflation works. Prices are high, demand is high, but supply cannot meet demand. And so everybody is scuttling to be the preferred. And so they put more money. It's no longer value, it is just necessity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was quite very plannable. Thank you for clapping. Yes, please do. Okay, so you mentioned a lot of money chasing goods. At some point, I was actually lost. I was like, we have the money in this country to chase goods, but yeah, in the financial term, a lot of money chasing goods, and those goods being, for lack of a better word, unavailable to meet all the demands. Now, most of our goods are imported. We are largely a country that is
Import.
imports, yeah, based country. And then most of the imports are affected by foreign exchange. Most of it is, in fact, all of it is affected by foreign exchange. For instance, even this fuel issue, there's some sort of import that has to come in, and that is why the prices are fluctuating. So, how can a business position itself in the sense that foreign exchange, because as a business, there are businesses that can increase price every time. There are some businesses that cannot afford to increase price at every given time. So how can the business position itself in the sense that it is cushioned against some sort of foreign exchange imports that affect the economy? And
Thank you very much. First, let's be clear about the irony of our environment. We are largely import dependent. That means that, and once you talk about import, the currency, the global currency, is not naira, it is dollars. Not even GBP, not euro. It is dollar. That's the clearing currency. That's the currency of the world. And so, if you run or operate in an economy that has a lot of dependency on a currency that is not local to you, the first thing that comes to mind very quickly is to say you need to find a way to hedge. And what is hedging? Hedging is a situation where, okay, let me go down memory lane. Let me go a bit down memory lane. Because it is very ironical also that Nigeria has crude. Nigeria is blessed with oil. And you would expect that we should be very influential when it comes to trading or having dollars. But unfortunately, the factors of production that will help us maximize our return. Now I'm sounding like that will help us get the most out of that resource that we can sell to bring dollar. We have not developed it. I'm sure you've heard all the craze about we export crude to import fuel or to import petrol. If you haven't heard of a better definition of madness, that's madness. So we take our local resource, crude oil, we ship it thousands of kilometers to a place where they will help us fractionally distill. And then they will put it back in ships and bring back to us. Many leakages. You cannot measure for measure determine the quantum of your crude that is going out to the diesel or the fuel that is coming in. What I mean is that crude is raw. So as they put it into a fractional distiller, which is different levels applying heat, you never can tell how much petrol will come. You don't know how much asphalt will come. It depends on the quality and the process. And so the guy who sends it back to you says, hey, out of these 1 million barrel tons of crude that you sent, I was only able to get 200,000 petrol. How do you argue? How do you measure? In it, my shipping cost, my processing cost, I take. And usually they don't even give you the opportunity to even dilly-dally. They say, I will take it in crude. I will take it in fuel. The Bible is never more apt than the borrower is slave to the lender. So we're just there. So even the foreign exchange doesn't come. To now think of an economy where we are forward tied for 7 years. That means that somebody has sat down to say, hey, China, give me money. You take my crude for the next 5 years. That means for those 5 years, there is no foreign reserves. There is no exchange coming in, at least not from oil. So for the local business, the problem is you need to find something that gives you value against the dollar. And that's what's called hedging. Or keep your money in a way that when dollar begins to rise, when naira begins to lose value, you still can measure at par. And that's why it's important. Either produce something that can be exported or have investments that are in dollars, or at least have it in commodities that are not fast eroding like your naira. It's tough. And I've not even added the fact that power is a major challenge. Power still has the dollar angle to it. So you'd find out that in Nigeria, to be an entrepreneur or a business owner, you've got to really, really know God. And you've got to be very strategic. And I know time will not permit us to talk about strategy now. The interest rate is also one of the things. One of the ways that a government tries to ensure that it manages inflation, and it's usually the central bank. You know that banks have a banker. The banker of the banks is the central bank. And so the banks and the central bank then says that, how come there's so much inflation? And when you say inflation, that means there's so much money in circulation. It doesn't necessarily translate to value. I wish I could explain that, but we don't have time. So the central bank is saying, I want to try and mop up some of the currency. I want to reduce all the money everywhere that is chasing little goods. And so what they do, the best they do everywhere, whether in Europe or in America, is they increase the interest rate. Meaning that there are two edges to that. Usually when I talk to people, they say, it doesn't make sense for government to increase interest rate. They are not interested in local companies growing. No, you were not the target of the government in increasing interest rates because the CBN is not your banker. There is a reserve that every bank is meant to hold. What the CBN seeks to do with increasing interest rate is to encourage the banks to put their money in CBN and get more interest. So every month when you hear MPR has gone up, MPR is just saying that now I'm willing to give banks 23.5% if you bring those your reserves, rather than let them just float around and increase inflation. So interest is meant to mop up money and reduce inflation. But does it work in this environment? No. Because the money in the bank has no direct correlation to the money in circulation in Nigeria. We defy all economic. Typically, you can measure the velocity of currency and say this is how much money that is in circulation because you can use your banks to rate it. But in Nigeria, how many people are even banked? So if less than 10% are banked, that means that the money that is chasing, that is causing this inflation, is not even in the banks. So that's why we are peculiar. And I said that's interesting to say this. So now imagine you now go. Because for the banks now, why should I give you my money as loan when I can just keep it in CBN and get 25%? The only incentive for me to give you a loan, you must give me a return that is more than what CBN is giving me. Because you are higher risk to me. CBN will not fail my money. Corporate risk is less. Sovereign risk is less. So now I must give you at a rate that is more than what CBN will give me, because I need to factor in my risk, my cost of chasing you and the rest. Let's say I now give you at 27%. Power will take you to generate your own energy. Let's say it adds 5%. There are other things. That means that you are operating at about 50%. What business are you doing that you can now charge over 50% of your cost of production to customer and you will still be viable? The guy who imports can import and add 30%. It's still better than your 50%. And that's why industry don't grow. Statistics say that over 50% of businesses that start in Nigeria, 50% of them die within the first 2 years, and another 20% within the next 5 years. And that's why government remains the best employer, or the most employer, or the big companies. And they give you a pittance for abandoning your own dream. Your question?
Wow. Okay, so with this current challenge of interest and ability to get loan as businesses. As an expert in the finance space, what would you advise? What other measures would you advise businesses and incoming business owners to take with assessing loans or assessing capital for their businesses? Some people do not have all the money. Some people are scared of the interest rates. You have even explained it to us, and even with that figure, some people are checking, does this match what I want to do in the next few years? Will I be profitable? So, what other measures can businesses take to access capital to start or to even scale their business?
Well, no doubt it is tough, but it is not impossible. I think I heard one of the speakers in the first service say something around angel investors. Let me also say that your greatest source of financing in this environment would remain friends and family, if you are privileged to have some that can help. Friends and family, in the sense that even if they want interest, it is still reasonable. It is still reasonable. However, I also advise, as much as possible, start small and grow big. Start small and grow big. What that means is that do not start your business being overgeared. No. Okay, there are various ways of raising equity. You can do friends, you can do equity, you can do debt. As much as possible, avoid expensive debt. Expensive debt already puts you under pressure. And I mean debt. So that it's not died as in debt. It puts you under pressure. Starting small means that look for what is within your income range or within your grasp. And then as you build it, you have more money. Also, please pay attention to your credit worthiness. I've seen many businesses here that are just run like it's a charity. Pay attention to your credit worthiness. And that's not only for banks or only for microfinance banks. There are 2 people or 3 people that would approach me in this church, as much as I am your pastor. I will favorably be inclined to one more than the other. Why? Because of small factors that you don't pay attention to. There are people, except it's money that I'm ready to lose, I will not put in your business. Hey, you feel me, right? And it's from the little things that you do or do not do. And so when you go into a business, your image, your branding, your everyday organization of your affairs matter. I meet people and I say, like, how much is your business worth? How can anybody know that one? Really? So, advice to you, start small, grow big. Look inwards so that you don't start from being overgeared in the business you want to do. Then also have clear plans. Don't borrow at 25% when you know your margins will not be more than 20%. You can as well just be sleeping in your house, because every day you operate that business, you are owing 5% more. That's even assuming that you can meet the margin of 20 and you pay 20 out of the 25 you owe. It doesn't make sense. Then you don't have to be an employer. There are other factors. Then when you employ, how do you treat your people? What kind of people do you employ? Many of us are penny wise, pounds foolish. You don't even do due diligence. You must do due diligence on the business, on the people, on your vendors and your partners, so that you don't enter what we call one chance here. But the smallest one you can do is be a man that can be trusted with money. The rest, God will help you.
Thank you very much, sir. I was going to ask you to advise business, but you already did that in your last speech.
Advice to businesses?
Yes, in this volatile economy, what would be just a short advice to? Okay.
I still think being on your own, and that's why I'm very excited when I see people like Julius, Ara, quite a number of entrepreneurs in this church. The returns may not be immediately attractive, but ultimately it is better than working for anyone. Because with your own business, you can build a legacy. And that's why, if that is where you are leaning towards, the best time to have started was yesterday. If you didn't start yesterday, the next best time is now. But be clear. Don't make blind guesses. I have Pastor Busayo, Biola here too. I remember his diamond days and then his early days. Just start well. The other thing is, please be a man or a woman of integrity. Your integrity will translate to how your business is perceived. Clearly. Clearly. It will shock you that even in this assembly, there are times we get calls. Say, now this is your member. How that person take be your member? Now 419. Collected money, did not deliver. Sold the image of a lion. And when they will come and show you what he delivered, he cannot even pass as a cat. And you are ashamed that I'm the pastor of this person. And then you hear, when you call the person, you hear silly things like, I gave him what he deserves when he no one pay. Do you have a name? Do you have an integrity? A yes is a yes, a no is a no. If the pricing is not worth it, don't do it. Don't go into it. And they are chasing you all around. And you are spoiling the name of God and the church.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll be unable to take questions. Okay, let's take questions. Do we have any questions in the house? Just 2 questions. Please, Mr. Odufejo.
So let me stand. My question is on that inflation thing, and I'm just asking your expert opinion, or maybe I direct it straight at you. If you wanted to go into business, you know how I better pass my neighbor used to be like 15K back in the day. Now it's about 100 and something. Does that mean it is a good business? So would you go into that kind of business just because things are now very expensive? I mean, it's expensive to sell. Does that make it a good business? So if you wanted to do business today, would you start selling generators? One, because it's now expensive. It used to be cheap. And then because, of course, there's no power. There's power problems. So everybody needs light. Does that make that a good business to invest your money into? And you can use that for any other thing too that looks like it's a problem. So use, what's this thing? Inverter, blah, blah, blah. Because I think that's also tied to power. So because there's no light and everybody's using inverter, does that mean that if you have your money today, you would go into the inverter business because it looks like it's being sold for 2 million, blah, blah, blah. Looks like I will make money. Does it work that way?
You keep talking about my money, gets me worried. Definitely. One thing you hinted on that I will stress also is that the whole idea of going into any business is that you identify a need. Very important. Identify a need. And that's why I love Nigeria. 200 million and counting. You know, you can always find a need. However, now you've taken energy, power to be the need in this instance. Remember I said before, check your margins. That it is now 100,000. How much do I put into it to even be able to sell it for 100,000? Also identify what is the turnaround rate or turnaround time. If I keep that generator in a shop where I pay rent and it will take 3 months to go, and the rent that I attribute to it is even more than, say, 20,000, add it to my cost of delivery, does it make sense? So it's not just enough to say people are buying or it is expensive. There's also that very important factor that we now teach people is sustainability. And when I say sustainability, not only of the business, but of the product line. I use example, my estate. There has been continuous increase in power. In fact, in the last 1 month only, we've increased like 4 times because the variables are very clear. It is diesel, it is power because we do hybrid. If there is no NEPA, they switch to IPP. NEPA in the last 2 weeks used to give us uptime of about 50 to 65. It has dropped to 30 and now 29 self. That means that 71% of the time there's no power even in my priced estate. But it's 24 hours to the undiscerning mind. But you have to go generator, which increases the cost. Now diesel has moved. The parts of the generator are largely imported. Dollar, thank God it has stabilized, but there was a time it went up. And so all of those will mark what it is that you charge as kilowatt hour. And I'm asking myself, I better pass my neighbor, even big generator, will still be affected by diesel. We have a replacement cost after a while. We have an amortization period. Nigeria is blessed with sunlight. Would I rather invest in solar now and scale up over the time, or invest in I better pass my neighbor or any other generator that I would keep replacing and will keep be subjecting me to Dangote and Ipsman and all of the other problem, plus all the crude oil wahala? My answer is no. And so in that instance, I would see and I better pass my neighbor business as one that may fade quicker than an inverter business. And an inverter business will give me longevity. An inverter business is easier to scale. I mean, when I say scale, I can buy 2 panels and 1 kVA inverter. And as God gives me convenience and comfort, I add 2 more panels. And I can trade in the 1 kVA inverter to get a 3 kVA inverter. And as you grow, you can keep doing that. And if you buy a good inverter, it can give you 10 years life of no wahala. So a whole lot of things come into business. But if you were directing it directly to me, what I would have said is that I will favor a service business more than a product business. With a service business, I can cut out 1 room in my house or even share space in the children's church and deliver my services and make my income. I can keep my overheads low. I can keep the variable costs, the things I don't have control over, low. And then as I grow bigger, I can then scale up and do other things.
Thank you for that answer. Okay, please, Ara's question.
Good morning, church. Thank you, Pastor. So we all know the government controls everything, individuals and companies. So, and they create policies. How does government policies affect business owners? Now I'm talking tax generally. So there is a deadline for 31st. If you don't file your taxes, you'll be charged 100,000 naira, and for every month you'll be charged 50,000 naira. How does this affect business owners?
All right. I feel very compromised, is it, or involved here? But let me talk like I do not know the government. Everywhere in the world, fiscal policies are as important as monetary policies. What are fiscal policies? The non-monetary policies. Tax is a major fiscal policy. The last thing you mentioned about filing your returns, actually, it is us cycling back to where we should have been since independence. Why should anybody earn income, whether through formal employment or informal employment, and not file returns? So what Lagos State is asking you to do is go to the Lagos State portal If you are registered as a taxpayer, you will find there it says income, allowances, relief, and the rest. Tell me, just show me what you made last year. If you think you have paid enough taxes, it's okay. I will individually or independently compute and I will endorse that you've paid enough taxes. If you haven't paid, I will come to you and ask you to pay more. So filing of returns is what we should be doing. And I said before when we were talking about reforms, we are going to a place where hiding is going to become more difficult. Very, very difficult. Even I that I thought I had it covered. And so one of the people who live in one of the small places I gave out for people to rent then sent me a message. Sir, please share with me your tax identification number. And I'm saying, is this woman? And truly, all I need to do is, if I did that, I will give her my number. She wants to claim her rent relief. And whether I like it or not, I have collected rent from her. So I owe her the duty. She will put my tax identification number and my details as a landlord. Lagos State will go to my own tax records and check whether I paid withholding tax on that rent. If I didn't pay, they will come after me with penalty and interest. So it's becoming practical. The only thing that made me hesitate is because, unfortunately, my business, I needed to regularize. And then because I didn't think at the time that she moved in, I would have signed the contract with the business name. I didn't need to sign with my name, the agreement. And now I would have given her the TIN number of the business. And when Lagos State comes after the business, of course, the business will be making less than 100 million. And I will not be liable to tax. And it will have nothing to do with me as an individual. So it's just to say, you've got to think the thread. Back to government policies. I think this government is on course. Execution may be bad. And that's why I said I feel a bit. Now, Taiwo Yedele is the Minister for State for Finance, really, which makes me glad. We were in practice together, gentle young man. Now he's a minister, positioned to even be the substantive minister. And I can tell you he's a professional. Government will begin to do the things they need to do. The tax reforms was one of them. Ensuring that the multiplicity of taxes is reduced is going to be another. Before now, and in having inputs then, they did a research. A normal business in Lagos State pays between 73 to 86 different kinds of taxes. Motor license, radio license, tenement, parking space, and all of that. That's aside of the VAT, the CGT, But the target of the reforms is to make it one digit, even if it is 9. And I tell you, a lot of them have been compressed. So government policy is meant to drive behavior. Government policy is meant to create a conducive environment for businesses to thrive. Are we there? No, we are not. Because there are still too many things. One of the basic things that we should get right is food. And so some of us, as we sit here, when you hear say 20 people killed by bandits in Kwara or Sambisa, you say, thank God, it's not me, it's not my family. My dear, the tomato from there, those guys pay taxes, one. Those guys cannot cross because they can be kidnapped. And so when you go to mile 12 and you buy as expensive as you are, so government policy could have affected that if they just dealt with security. The same thing that affected crude oil. Nigeria now produces less than 1.5 barrels per day. We have an installed capacity for over 2.2. Think of how many barrels are being trapped. Think of the money. So there's a lot of things that are tied. And so when some products are seasonal, like now they say, tomato makes sense, plantain makes sense. It is now that we should actually have warehouses, silos, and the rest where we will keep until when the season is off. But there's no power. There are no warehouses. So we eat like cavemen. When it is plenty, we buy it cheap. And we do not remember simple principle that Joseph created in the Bible, that there will be seasons where it will be less, where we need to keep. Many of us don't even know about the cold chain technology. That's also a business we could get into. So government policies are good, but implementation is bad. And because they make policies in silo. So he's saying that there will be no VAT, no tax on food. But how about security? How about empowering? Why are we still doing subsistence agriculture? Why aren't we mechanized? Why is everybody looking for 50K, 60K jobs in Lagos when you can just go down to Ogun State, Ishiwa and Co., and have acres and plant and bring to Lagos? Or you can do land banking where two of you can come together and build plantations. Sorry, time is taking.
Turn off the mic. Okay. We'll take Pastor Biola, you had a question.
Okay, praise God. Pastor, I just want to talk about the current raw material. Praise God.
Hallelujah.
You know, I called my company, was it last week? I was about to make a purchase and they said there's increment of prices. Everything catapult. And I asked them why, what's going on? They said because of Strait of Hormuz. It's being blocked by the Iran guys. Praise God. Okay. I was made to understand that 20% of the world vessel passes through Strait of Hormuz. What about the remaining 80%? Why are they not working? Why is it that the 20% is affecting the whole world? Affecting the whole world, including Nigeria for that matter, that we produce fuel and yet we are having increment. So are you saying Dangote is making bastard money? Or let's say, okay, the US likewise, limited vessels passes through Strait of Hormuz, and yet increment kept going up. So how does this work? I don't really understand. Where is the 80%? Why does the 80% is not working for us since 20% has been blocked by the Iranians? Praise God.
Thank you, Pastor Biola. How many of us even know what he spoke about now? Okay, I said some time ago, maybe last year, that the world is interconnected. You will not understand how much of interconnectivity we have until you start getting things like this. A while ago, it was Russia, Ukraine, affecting wheat, affecting oil, affecting many things. And we thought it was a joke. Then America chose to invade Iran because of some affiliation to Israel and some underlying factors. And then it became obvious to us that Iran was not only a major oil producer, Iran also controls a channel that distributes oil to almost the whole world. And because Iran now is fighting back, I may not be able to fight America with nuclear or other weapons, but I can use small tactical methods, like ensuring that I stifle supply, I stifle tariffs. So, to your question, and it's not going to, unless those wars end, we will continue to see increase in price of oil, fuel. It's not doomsday, but it's the truth. Is Dangote making super profit? I won't answer yes or no, but I'll just say that it comes back to a country that cannot get its acts right. The last 6 months would have been a time, in those days when we were still a bit better, there was something called oil boom. The focus would have shifted to the others that have oil, and we would have made super great gain. Brent crossed 100. Bonny Light was around $89 to $90 per barrel. Our budget was on the basis of about $50. Think of how much we would have made in the last 3 months, or 2 months, or 3 months. But because we do not have our acts together, and so that gate that is closed would affect transportation. It would affect tariffs. It would affect everything. And you say, why that the 80% that is open? Nigeria is just one amongst close to 200 countries. Every country has their affiliation and commitment to oil suppliers and oil producers. Unfortunately, we don't even have such because we think that we are self-sufficient. And now that we are not, imagine Dangote says to you, I still buy crude from America. And what is his installed capacity? 650,000 barrels is what is in that Olokonla, whatever, free trade zone. Even with the war, we have up to 1.2 barrels per day. Some simple child will say, why don't you just give Dangote 650? But the 1.2 is already sold till 2032. And so if the man imports from America, he won't pay in naira, he will raise dollars. The government had semantics and they say they will allow him pay for crude in naira. How much crude do they provide to him? That's what you should first ask. So, sir, they are correct. The 80% is servicing the whole world. And unfortunately, we are not top on the priority list. If Iran chooses to close more, we will feel it more. And we will pay more. It's bad. And the other thing that you must note in Nigeria is that oil just has a cascading effect on everything. 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 I heard hail cab drivers are on strike. Agriculturalists are on strike. Employers are laying off. I could have gone to my employer and say, between February and now, I used to buy fuel at 7.39, I'll be 7.30. Now it is 1,335. I even have to make sure I go to MRS. Which employer wants to adjust my salary by that much? Have they made that much? And that's why it is good to be self-employed. You can do your business from your house or close to your house. Like Pastor Biola now, if not for this purchase, he's still making his money. And he would not have known about this Strait of Hormuz. I have overshot the time. And that's why I don't like talking economics. I haven't even said anything that is in my mind. But please, don't be foolish. Do not depend on a single source of income. That you work for, let's even assume that there was someone here who works for Total or Chevron. I have many people who do so, and they have other businesses. Some of them even make more money from their other businesses. Because when Chevron pays you well, set up something that you can employ people, provide service. It could be as simple as a dry cleaning agency. It could be a clearing house, anything. But just make sure that, like the Bible said, cast your bread upon many waters. Do many things. And if one avenue becomes tighter, you can leverage on the other ones and you will make money. As a teacher, do private tutors. Do online teaching. I have students in Canada, even till now. It's just that she has to wake up at night while I'm sleeping. But if that's what you have to do, because they will do with their time. So stop looking. There are many ways to make money. And this might be a good time to go into politics. And don't say I am into politics when you are not known by any party. The best you will be is a voter that will be watching over your votes. And those boys will come and give you koboko. But if you have a card for any party, someday they will think of you for a position.
Put a round of applause for our pastor. This has been such an insightful session. Thank you very much, sir.